Die, old guy, Levitt said with a sinister smile on his face. Below, all the jaws of Chaos soldiers who were retreating crazily closed their eyes in despair when they saw this scene, while the faces of Morgan, Oldman, and Pints on the side all had a hint of confusion. Smiling evilly, the giant axe rapidly enlarged in Dias' eyes. At this moment, he had no other option but to close his eyes and wait for death. At this moment, whoops. Under the horrified gazes below, the giant axe was getting closer and closer to Diaz's head, and just when everyone thought he was destined to die, a sound broke through the air, and suddenly there was a sudden sound from the sky. There was a sound of breaking through the sky, and a stream of light flew from a distance like a meteor. The spiritual power in the entire sky seemed to be violent in an instant, and an invisible ripple was like a disturbed water surface, moving towards the person wielding the giant axe. Levitt rippled away. The ripples seemed slow, but they arrived in front of Levitt in an instant. Levitt was suddenly shocked. Such a powerful attack made him feel the coming of death in his mind. Where did this attack come out of nowhere? In the crisis, Levitt didn't care about killing Dias and suddenly raised the giant axe in his hand and struck back. Pung! Under the attack of this ripple, Levitt's tiger's mouth split open instantly, and Hu Zhong's giant axe was thrown away. A powerful spiritual power was instantly transmitted into Levitt's body. Levitt's body was shaken to the ground. Continuously retreat. Who? In the sky, Levitt and others looked into the distance with frightened and angry faces, while Elder Dias, who had survived the disaster, also hurriedly turned his head to look. In the air, Belgium, who had escaped here before, was suspended in the air, staring at Levitt and others coldly. Belgium, why are you? Didn't you escape? Why are you back again? Diaz, who had been a little surprised when he saw Belgium, his face immediately darkened, and his eyes were filled with anger and blame. He risked his life and desperately resisted Levitt and the others in order to let Belgium escape. However, Belgium came back after leaving, which filled Dias's heart with anger. It turns out that you are this damn good for nothing. I didn't expect you to dare to come back. Haha, do you think you can escape from us again? Morgan, the 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master of the Jebwa kingdom, looked stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then, he cast his eyes on Levitt, who was standing aside. Levitt, you are so useless, aren't you? You were split open by this guy and even lost your weapon? Facing him, Morgan laughed, but there was no smile on Levitt's face, and his eyes were full of solemnity. It's not him, he whispered in a low voice. What? Morgan on the side couldn't help but be stunned. He was not the one who made the move earlier. Levitt looked solemn and shouted coldly, I wonder which friend made the move. Please come out and see me. This matter is a grudge between our 13 kingdoms of the south and the jaws of chaos. It has nothing to do with outsiders. Levitt's voice sounded in the silent sky and continued to spread. It has nothing to do with outsiders? You are so brave to kill wantonly on the jaws of my chaos jaws. Who gave you the courage? A deep voice that contained anger rumbled in the sky, and the terrifying magic power reverberated throughout the sky, making everyone change their color. Who is it? Hearing this voice, Levitt and others suddenly looked up, and saw a young man with black hair in a gray-brown robe slowly falling down from the sky, looking at them with cold eyes, and behind him, a young man with brown hair also followed closely and landed slowly. Jia, Lord Jace. Looking at the familiar figure descending from the sky, Elder Dias's eyes suddenly became wet, and his mouth trembled as he spoke. Although Renaud had already told Dias their real names of Jason and himself, at this critical moment, Dias, who was so excited when he suddenly saw Jason, couldn't help but shout out Jason's former reputation in the jaws of chaos. Jace? On the other side, after Levitt and others heard the name coming out of Dias's mouth, there was a hint of shock on their faces at first, and then there was a hint of ecstasy. Jace, are you the Jace from the Chaos territory? Levitt said in a low voice. Exactly. Jason said indifferently with a cold expression. Across from each other, Levitt and Morgan looked at each other with surprise in their eyes. Is this person the Jace that Lord Slime and the others asked to inquire about? If Jace is captured and handed over to Master Slime, then Levitt and Morgan couldn't help but think of the rewards Master Slime would give them after catching Jace. Thumping with excitement. Haha, you really can't find anything after wearing iron shoes. It doesn't take much effort to get here. The hook-nosed old man Morgan said with a sinister smile, our team from the 13 kingdoms in the southern region is looking for you everywhere. I didn't expect that you wouldn't be there. You've been hiding so well and yet you dare to come out. It's just the right time to capture you and hand you over to Master Slime. I think the adults will be very interested in you. Hearing what Morgan said, the expression on the face of Elder Diaz Dog suddenly he couldn't help but said anxiously to Jason, Lord Jason, hurry up and go back to Lord Renault in the City of Chaos. Levitt and Morgan are both 7th level senior Imperial spiritual masters. Are we right? Huh. Diaz's heart was full of anxiety. If Jason had appeared before he was injured, he would have been very happy. With the strength of the 7th level senior Imperial spiritual masters he and Belgium had taken after taking the elixir, including Master Jason and the young man beside him, there are 4 Emperor Spirit Masters on his side, which is not inferior to the other 4. Baidu Postbar is the fastest updated. But now, he is seriously injured and his strength has long been destroyed. He can barely keep flying. The effect of the elixir on Belgium has also faded. Master Jason and the young man next to him, but they are all so young. Even if they reach the level of Imperial Spiritual Master, they are probably not strong enough, and they will not be the opponents of Levitt and the other 4. When he thought about Master Jason falling into the hands of Levitt and the others, Diaz's heart was filled with annoyance and pain for himself. Want to leave? Now that you're here, stay. Morgan sneered. The 4 of them spread out again, tightly surrounding the 4 Jasons. Jason Tianren, Elder Diaz said anxiously. Diaz, don't worry. Jason glanced coldly at Morgan and the others who surrounded him, his eyes were calm, and then he came straight to Diaz and put his right hand on his shoulder. Don't move, I'll heal you. Jason said indifferently. Immediately, the black strange power controlled the wood spirit beads in his mind to spin rapidly, and a series of wood spirit beads containing rich vitality where the force element was suddenly transferred from Jason's right hand to Diaz's traumatized body. Lord Jason, Elder Diaz wanted to speak out, but the next moment his eyes widened and his mouth opened wide, unable to make any sound. In Diaz's perception, a rich wood-based life vitality that made every cell in his body feel extremely comfortable surged out from Jason's right side and spread to his limbs and bones in an instant, and then spread to his body. In his horrified eyes, his meridians, muscles, internal organs, etc., which were covered with wounds and broken wounds, healed rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a moment, Diaz felt that the injury in his body was almost healed. Although he had not yet returned to the peak state before the injury, if he fought, there would be no problem at all. Whoosh! As soon as Jason took his hand away from Diaz, Diaz flashed in front of Jason and looked at Morgan and the others with stern eyes. Lord Jason, go away quickly, I'll stop you, Diaz said coldly, but before he could finish his words, Jason grabbed his shoulder. Diaz turned around in shock, only to see Jason looking at him with a faint smile, and then looked at the young man with long brown hair aside. Loken, get rid of them without leaving a single one behind. Jason said coldly. It's Master. Loken grinned, the biting coldness spreading in his eyes. Huh, what a crazy tone. Not far away, Morgan heard the conversation between Jason and Loken and couldn't help but sneer. For his sneer, Loken didn't pay any attention to it, and the 10,000 Wood Emperor staff suddenly appeared in his hand. Facing Levitt and the others, he slowly took a step forward. Huh, pretend to be a ghost. Morgan sneered. With his perception, he could tell at a glance that Loken in front of him was only a 7th-level Imperial Spiritual Master. It seems that there are always some arrogant people in this world. Young people, don't rely on your own high talent and regard the heroes in the world as nothing, Morgan said coldly. The long sword in his hand kept shaking, and a powerful Saiyan spiritual power suddenly surged out from his body. A dazzling light burst out from his eyes, and the terrifying 7th-level advanced spiritual power burst out. He gathered his strength and aimed at Loken's location, slashing down hard with his sword. The secret of the wind element, void slash. Morgan let out a loud shout. In the midst of the roar, the shocking wind element descended. A wind blade several feet long burst out from the long sword in his hand and aimed at Loken. He struck hard. Tear apart. Under this sword, the void was cut open, and a tiny space crack appeared faintly on the giant dog wind blade, emitting an astonishing spiritual power and surrounding Loken. Haha, arrogant boy, give it to me. Die. Morgan laughed crazily. Although he pretended to despise Loken on the surface, as the second master of the Jibwa kingdom and who has been fighting in the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia for many years, how could he really be careless? As soon as he took action, he displayed his special killing skill. He vowed to kill Loken with one sword of his own. No, little brother, back off. Sensing the power of Morgan's terrifying wind blade, the face of Elder Deus next to Jason immediately showed fear, his eyes widened, and he yelled. He could feel that the power of Morgan's move was so powerful that even he who had taken the spiritual potion before and reached the 7th level of the advanced peak Imperial Spiritual Master might not be able to block it. Appearing with Lord Jason, he seemed to be the only one who could stop it. How could a young man in his early 20s be able to stop him? However, in the face of Elder Deus's scream, Loken seemed not to hear it. His face did not change at all, and his figure did not retreat at all. He just waved the 10,000 wood Emperor staff in his hand. Out. The head of the 10,000 wood Emperor staff suddenly hit the huge wind blade released by Morgan. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment, and then pong. A scene that horrified everyone happened. A dazzling cyan light bloomed from the 8th Order wood spiritual core at the head of the Wanmu Emperor staff, and under this cyan light, a subtle explosion sounded. Morgan tried his best to release, and the huge wind blade containing terrifying power continued to tremble, and then suddenly collapsed, turning into wind spiritual power that filled the sky. Elements dissipated in the sky. After the cyan light broke through the wind blade displayed by Morgan, it mercilessly impacted Morgan, who was not far away. Morgan, be careful. Levitt yelled from the side. What? Looking at this unexpected scene, Morgan's eyes widened for a moment, and he suddenly exclaimed. There was fear on his face, and the robe on his body moved without any wind. At this moment of life and death crisis, he burst out with unparalleled power. Amazing spiritual power soared from his body, and the long sword in his hand was shining brightly, fiercely. It struck hard on the cyan light cast by Loken. Bang! A deafening roar resounded in the world, and Morgan Huzhong's long sword instantly shattered under the bombardment of cyan light. After the cyan light broke through the long sword, it shrank in a circle, fiercely. Hit Morgan in the chest. Pfft! Blood spurted out from Morgan's mouth, with a look of horror on his face, and his whole body was thrown far away by the power of the explosion. Luoquan's body moved and instantly turned into a stream of light, rushing forward. Stop him! Levitt roared. Death! Death! At this critical moment, Oldman and Pints roared. A golden sword rainbow, splitting the heaven and earth, and a roaring flaming dragon aimed at Loken fiercely. Attacked hard. Levitt also roared in anger. After losing his giant axe, the earth's spiritual power in his body surged, and a dazzling light burst out from his eyes. The terrifying 7th level advanced spiritual power was condensed and aimed at Loken's location. A hard punch. You brat, go to hell. Boom. A deafening roar rang out. The shocking earth spiritual element descended, and Levitt's punch made the air burst. The void condensed, and the infinite earth elements condensed into a towering mountain at Levitt's fist, carrying unparalleled power and pressing down on Loken's location. One of the mysteries of the earth element, Asahi Taiwe, is overwhelming. Humph. Facing the attacks of Levitt and the others, Loken snorted coldly, his face still expressionless, and he waved the 10,000-wood Emperor staff again. A dazzling green light bloomed from the 10,000-wood Emperor staff, forming a huge shield in front of him. Misty green light was released from the shield. On the surface of the shield, mysterious, obscure, and complicated, the continuous flow of spiritual symbols and spiritual patterns represents the law of the wood system that has locked the world and remains unmoved. Boom. 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 In an instant, the huge golden sword rainbow, the roaring flame dragon, and the rolling towering mountains, 3 huge attacks, collided heavily with the cyan shield. An unbelievable scene happened for Levitt and others. The cyan shield deployed by Loken remained motionless in the void under such a fierce attack, while all the attacks they launched seemed to be hit by eggs. The stone was like a wave hitting a dam, instantly disintegrating and dispersing, turning into the power of countless elements again and slowly dissipating in the air. What? Impossible? This guy is so scary, let's go quickly. Levitt and the 3 of them screamed in shock, feeling extremely fearful in their hearts, and they suddenly retreated. The behavior shown by Luoquan completely chilled them. They could no longer muster the slightest belief in resisting. The spiritual power in their bodies increased to the maximum, and they wanted to escape from here. You want to leave now? It's too late. Please stay with me, all of them. Loken made a cold voice. The cyan shield, condensed on his body, suddenly dissipated, and the 10,000-wood Emperor staff in his hand was aimed at the 3 of them, swung away fiercely. The secret of wood is that withered trees come spring. Luoquan shouted loudly, and his whole body suddenly emitted a blue light. The blue aurora filled the sky, overwhelming, intertwined with each other, and enveloped the 3 of Levitt from all directions. It was like a torrential flood, and in an instant the 3 of them were drowned. Wings update, team updates the fastest, ah. Seeing this horrific scene, the 3 people in Levitt let out miserable screams. They felt a kind of deafening vitality, constantly suppressing and absorbing them. The spiritual power in their bodies continuously drew out the 7th order imperial spiritual power from their bodies. Get out of my way. Break it. Roar. The 3 of them kept screaming and roaring. The weapons in their hands kept slashing, trying to break free from the blue aurora that filled the sky, but they couldn't. It was of no use at all. I could only watch helplessly as the spiritual energy in my body was continuously absorbed, and then my whole body felt weaker and weaker. In the end, I couldn't even levitate in the air. Die. A cold light flashed in Loken's eyes, and the Wanmu Emperor's staff was withdrawn. Bang! 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 A loud roar erupted from the bodies of the 3 Levitts. The struggling bodies completely stopped twisting, and their angry and frightened eyes were completely distracted and lost their energy. It was dark, and only 3 lifeless corpses were left. They fell heavily from the sky, like 3 rag bags, and hit the ground. Seeing this ferocious scene, Elder Diaz opened his mouth wide and looked at Loken blankly, not knowing what to say at all. This Levitt is a 7th level high-level Imperial Spiritual Master, and Oldman and Pints are also 7th level intermediate and low-level Imperial Spiritual Masters. The 3 of them have joined forces to reach the peak of the 7th level advanced level. Even if they took the spiritual potion, he had to stay away, but in the hands of this brown-haired young man, he was killed in 3 or 2 blows, which shocked Diaz. Under the sky, the soldiers of the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia, who had been fighting in the distance before and were chasing the jaws of chaos soldiers, also stopped their actions one by one. They stared at this scene blankly, their hearts filled with despair. Ho ho! As for the Chaos Jaw soldiers who had been fleeing, they stopped fleeing and shouted excitedly. Although they didn't understand what happened to the two people who suddenly appeared, Nanxiao Ten, they could still tell the difference between the deaths of the three imperial spirit masters of the three kingdoms. Masters, got the last one left, let me kill him. After killing the three Levits, Loken looked to the sky in the distance, where Morgan was running away frantically. After being injured by Loken's staff earlier, Morgan, who knew he was outmatched, took advantage of the speed of his wind-based imperial spiritual master to avoid Loken's dead tree spring, and then did not even dare to turn his head. He returned, directly increasing his speed to the maximum and escaping into the distance. Luoyuan, there's no need for you to chase him. Just when Luoyuan was about to chase him out, Jason said, he can't escape. The three of them, Luoyuan, Diaz, and Belgium in his doubtful eyes, a sneer appeared on Jason's face, and a five-color light rose from his body. His expression was as cold as a god, and he grabbed Morgan from a distance as he flew away crazily in the distance. Boom! Jason stretched out his right hand, and a terrifying coercion suddenly filled the entire world. At this moment, the sky seemed to dim suddenly, and everyone felt suffocated and could hardly breathe. A giant dog with an astonishing suction force appeared in this area. Morgan, who is a 7th-level senior wind-based imperial spiritual master, had already been far away from everyone after flying past for such a long time, but under Jason's grasp next, his figure that was flying around suddenly stopped in the void, struggling like an ant. Ah! In the distant sky, Morgan's face was full of panic. The power of the 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master in his body was constantly released, trying to break away from this inexplicable suction force. But with his 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master level strength, how could he break free under Jason's control? He was firmly imprisoned in the void, motionless. Die, remember, if there is a next life, be a good person and don't invade my jaws of chaos again. Jason said expressionlessly, his voice indifferent. His voice seemed to have traveled through the distance of space, and instantly reached Morgan's ears. Resounding. And you can't kill me. I'm from the Jebo Kingdom. If you kill me, Lord Dustin will avenge me. Lord Slime will avenge me. You can't kill me. Morgan said in his mouth. A horrified roar. However, Jason didn't pay attention at all. His right hand turned into a claw, as if he wanted to pop a balloon. He aimed at Morgan, who was fixed in the void, and pinched it hard. No. Morgan's eyes widened and he screamed in horror. The fastest update on Baidu postbar bang. A subtle explosion sounded, and Morgan's shrill roar suddenly stopped. His body suddenly exploded and turned into a rain of blood from the sky. It drifted down, leaving only his desperate scream, which still echoed between heaven and earth for a long time. Within a few minutes, the 4 imperial spiritual masters of the 13 kingdoms of the southern region, who had been arrogant and majestic before, were all killed without exception. Over the blood-stained wilderness, the violent wind carrying the smell of blood roared continuously, making a whistling sound. Diaz, Belgium, and all the soldiers of the 13 kingdoms of the southern territory and the Jaws of Chaos soldiers present were stunned to see this scene, their expressions turned petrified, and the sky over the entire wilderness was filled with dead silence for an instant. With a few gestures, Jason stretched out his hand to stop Morgan, who was a 7th-level senior wind-type imperial spiritual master, and had already flown far away, and then killed him from a distance with one move. Over the endless wilderness, everyone stared at this scene in stunned silence. Their hearts were hit by an unprecedented shock, and they could hardly believe their eyes. Diaz and Belgium both opened their eyes in horror, looking stupidly at the expressionless Jason with dull expressions. Previously, Loken's single-handed fight against the 3 imperial spiritual masters Levitt, Oldman and Pints had already surprised Diaz and Belgium. Now when Jason takes action, their brains are even more confused. Immediately crashed. Jason's performance was really too exaggerated. Who is Morgan? The second master of the Jebo Kingdom, a 7th-level high-level wind-based imperial spiritual master. Even if a low-level 8th-level emperor spiritual master wants to kill him, it will take at least a moment of confrontation. But what about Jason? With just one grab in the void, Morgan, who was famous for his speed, was firmly fixed, and then with a simple squeeze, Morgan's body was gone. This was a 7th level high-level Imperial Spirit Master. How incredible was this power? Such a shocking scene was difficult to understand in the minds of Diaz, an intermediate Imperial Spiritual Master, and Belgium, a low-level Imperial Spiritual Master. And in this brief moment, kill these bastards from the 13 kingdoms of the southern region. Come on, brothers, the time for revenge has come. Escape, let's escape, quickly. Mr. Morgan and the others, they are all dead, retreat, retreat quickly. The sounds of fighting and roars soaring into the sky resounded in the wilderness below. The soldiers of the 13 kingdoms in the southern territory, who had previously been chasing the soldiers of the Chaos territory, now had faces full of panic. They flew back one after another, including Morgan and the 4 Levits, the commander-in-chief of the 13 kingdoms in the southern region, are all dead. Why are these soldiers still fighting on the battlefield? On the Stern continent, what truly determines the outcome of a battle is the confrontation of peak force. Lord Jason, the enemy has been defeated, let's kill him. Diaz and Belgium also recovered from the shock and looked at Jason excitedly, their eyes full of fierceness. For more than a year, the teams of the Chaos territory have been retreating steadily. Diaz and the others have been hunted down countless times. Every battle ended in failure. Now with the appearance of Jason, the Chaos territory has finally, with a rare victory, a feeling of exhilaration and desire to fight continued to surge in the hearts of the two. Looking at the excited expressions of Diaz and Belgium, as well as the frantic retreat of the 13 kingdoms in the southern region below, Jason was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "You guys give chase?" "Yes." Diaz and Belgium, he responded at the same time, and then flew down like a tiger rushing into a flock of sheep, rushing into the ranks of the masters of the 13 kingdoms in the southern region. Kill! Soaring roars echoed over the wilderness, and screams and shouts of killing continued to sound. Jason looked at the bloody scene below and sighed silently. This is war. Jason asked himself that he was not a kind person, and he had killed and defeated countless enemies on the way to his growth. However, a war like this, with rivers of blood and countless casualties, comes from later generations. Jason, who was in the peaceful era when there was only one Lingdo Empire in the mainland, saw it for the first time, which gave him a huge impact on his soul. On the side, Loken's body was shaking slightly. He was kind-hearted and asked him to kill a few enemies. He would strike coldly without hesitation, but people like Diaz and others who slaughtered others nakedly, even if they were enemies. What General Fong did was something he couldn't do. With the addition of Diaz and Belgium, the entire battlefield could be said to be one-sided. After a while, the large number of soldiers from the 10 Sun Kingdoms in the southern territory who fled were unable to withstand it at all. Surrender, we surrender. Don't kill, we surrender, surrender. They were covered in blood. They threw away the weapons in their hands and stopped running away. They stood there and just trembled and shouted. Morgan and the others fell. They completely lost the courage to fight, and the pursuit of Diaz and Belgium made them understand that if they did not surrender, they would face only death. However, many soldiers from the territory of Chaos, who were full of anger and had just returned from the death line, and had already been killed with red eyes, could not stop for a moment, and still kept slashing the weapons in their hands. However, the soldiers of the 13 kingdoms in the southern territory allowed the other party to kill them and no longer resisted, and they were unable to resist. Stop! At this moment, a thunderous roar resounded over the entire wilderness, and a figure suddenly flew over all the Chaos Territory warriors. This man was none other than Elder Diaz. He looked excitedly at all the soldiers present. The enemy has surrendered. We have won. We have won. Don't kill anymore. We have won. Diaz shouted loudly. For some reason, at this moment of victory, his nose couldn't help but feel sour. We won. Victory. Haha, victory. Under Dias's loud shout, many soldiers from the territory of chaos also stopped what they were doing. They murmured in their mouths, and tears couldn't help but flow down. What a hard-won victory. It has been more than a year since the war between the 13 kingdoms of the Southern Territory and the Territory of Chaos. All 4 of the opponents' commanders at the level of Emperor Spiritual Masters have fallen. This is the first time for such a glorious victory. Lord Diaz, who are these 2 adults who arrived suddenly? If possible, let us thank each other. Suddenly, an officer in the crowd shouted. Yeah, let's thank each other. The other soldiers also shouted. Lord Diaz's eyes turned red. He couldn't bear it anymore and his vision was blurred. Lord Jace, it's Lord Jace, our Lord Jace from the territory of chaos is back. He's back to save our territory of chaos. Diaz shouted excitedly. Lord Jace. What? Is it Lord Jace? Is he Lord Jace? Many of the soldiers below were surprised and looked at the 2 figures of perseverance in the sky and the empty wilderness. On the ground, the noisy sound stopped for a moment, and then wow! The whole wilderness suddenly started to boil again. Lord Jace! Lord Jace! Lord Jace! Thunderous cheers erupted in the entire wilderness. The earth-shattering cheers echoed in the empty sky for a long time, and then gathered into one stream, soaring straight into the sky. Shocking world. Because of the surrender of the soldiers of the 13 kingdoms in the Southern Territory, Black Rock City was quickly taken back by the troops of the Chaos Territory. In the city, many houses were still burning, the walls collapsed, and it was a mess. But the faces of all the soldiers from the territory of chaos were filled with joy as they cleaned up the chaotic city. In Black Rock City, in a spacious living room of the city lord's mansion, Jason, Loken, Diaz, and Belgium sat down in their respective positions. As the largest administrative center in the city, Black Rock City's city lord's mansion had been ransacked after the city was destroyed, but the damage was not serious. After being briefly cleaned by someone sent by Diaz, it was still tidy. Lord Jason, you are finally back. It has been more than 6 years since you left. Everyone misses you so much. Elder Diaz looked at Jason in the hall and spoke excitedly. I didn't expect to be away for such a long time. After I returned, I joined the Spirit Medicine Master Tower and have been practicing until now. Jason said. We have all heard from Master Renault about your joining the Alchemist Tower, but why are you back again? Diaz was confused. I am currently in the Salem Empire and serve as the president of the Londo Province's Panacea Masters Union. I wanted to come back to see everyone, but I didn't expect that something like this happened. Having said this, Jason's face suddenly darkened. Diaz, how is the situation in the City of Chaos now? Where is my father Renault? Then why did the 13 kingdoms of the Southern Territory invade our territory of chaos? From the mouth of Temple, the leader of the Wild Lion Adventure Group, Jason only briefly heard about the invasion of the territory of chaos by the 13 kingdoms in the southern region. However, as the leader of a small adventure group, he did not know the specific things. It wasn't very clear. Now that he saw Diaz, Jason immediately asked. Lord Jason, the 13 kingdoms of the Southern Territory invaded our territory of chaos mainly to plunder the elixir masters. Sir, the Spiritual Medicine Master Association you established has trained a large number of elixir masters for our territory of chaos. The 13 kingdoms of the Southern Territory, the kingdom is jealous, and in the territory of chaos, Belgium and I led the soldiers from the north of the territory of chaos to resist the invasion of the northern troops of the 13 kingdoms in the Southern Territory. We have not returned for more than 10 days. We are not very clear about the specific situation. As for Lord Renault, he was practicing in the death maze at the beginning. A year ago, Lord Renault was promoted to the 8th level intermediate Imperial Spiritual Master. After he came out of seclusion for a while, he fell into seclusion again. We were afraid of disturbing him. He, therefore, never told him about the war in the territory of chaos. However, when Belgium and I left the city of chaos more than 10 days ago, Lord Archimedes saw the crisis and asked Patriarch Tyson to go to the death maze to inform him. He should have returned to the city of chaos now. Diaz told Jason one by one about the situation in the city of chaos. This time, among the teams from the 3 kingdoms of the southern region, the leader is Sharon, a 7th-level senior imperial spiritualist from the Beatty kingdom, and there are more than 10 imperial spiritualists in total. With Lord Renault's strength as an 8th-level intermediate emperor spiritualist, even if the teams of the 13 southern kingdoms rush into the city of chaos, they can completely block it. What I am most afraid of is that after the 13 southern kingdoms see the strength of Lord Renault, their 8th-level imperial spiritual masters will be dispatched. The top master of the 13 kingdoms in the southern territory, Slime, is an 8th-level senior emperor spiritualist, and there are also several intermediate and low-level emperor spiritualists. If they are all dispatched, even though Lord Renault is an 8th-level emperor spiritualist, he's an intermediate imperial spiritual master, but with his own strength, I'm afraid it's impossible to resist him. What Diaz didn't know was that the Slime and the others he was talking about had already arrived at the merged line. What? An 8th-level high-level emperor spiritual master? Jason stood up suddenly, with worry in his eyes. No, I have to go to chaos as soon as possible. That night, Jason and Luo Kuan did not staying, with Diaz and Belgium watching. He left Black Rock City and rushed to the city of chaos. Jaws of Chaos, City of Chaos. The huge city, like a wild beast, lies in the center of the territory of chaos. The simple and old city walls have a dark surface, as if they were made of molten iron. They shine with a metallic luster, giving people a suffocating sense of oppression. And a strong sense of murder. As the most prosperous central city in the entire Jaws of Chaos, the number of people handled here every day has reached a rather terrifying figure, and Dog Street is usually bustling with activity. However, now, in this once prosperous city, the flow of people on the street is extremely sparse. Every pedestrian looks in a hurry, and the atmosphere is particularly depressing. There is a faint feeling of oppression of an approaching storm. What caused this feeling was naturally the invasion of the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia. According to the news from the front line, the team of the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia fought through all the obstacles and conquered the nearest city to the city of chaos yesterday. No one could I don't know when the troops from the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia will suddenly attack the city of chaos. There is no shortage of well-informed people among the people, and all kinds of gossip are spreading wildly. The strength of the teams of the 13 kingdoms in the southern region is constantly penetrating into everyone's heart. Under such circumstances, the people of the entire city of chaos are all panic-stricken. Although the Jaw of Chaos is now under the control of the 3 major families, some families and forces that can escape have already removed themselves early. The properties purchased in the city of chaos were quietly transferred to uninvaded cities in the western part of the Jaws of Chaos. Of course, there are also some families and forces that are determined to coexist and die with the city of chaos, but they still stick closely to the 3 major families and defend the city of chaos. At this moment, on the plain hundreds of miles away from the city of chaos, a huge team was slowly advancing. Not far away, the outline of the city of chaos was looming. Is this the center of the Jaws of Chaos, the city of chaos? Among the dozen people looking at the Jaws of Chaos in the distance, a middle-aged burly dog man with short brown curly hair said indifferently, and then a wave of hands. All troops stop. A loud voice echoed over the entire team, and the huge team suddenly stopped. A sneer appeared on the face of the burly slime man. The city of chaos has finally arrived. Let us go and see what kind of characters there are in this city of chaos. Haha, I heard about this chaos. There are 3 7th-level elixir masters in the city. I, Kong Tun, have never seen them before in my life. An old man wearing a blue robe also laughed. This person is none other than Kong Dun, the second highest ranked 8th-level intermediate wind-type imperial spiritual master in the Dick Kingdom. Elixir master? Right now, I only care about the things in the death maze. Dustin, the top master of the Jiebwa kingdom and an 8th level intermediate gold-type imperial spiritual master, said with a smile. Indeed, compared to the elixir emperor, the treasures of the spiritual gods attract me more. Hoffman, the top master of the Yalu kingdom and an 8th level intermediate water imperial spiritual master, also spoke out. The dozen or so imperial spirit masters and imperial spirit masters on the side who exuded various powerful auras also laughed. Okay, don't talk nonsense, let's go, let's fight quickly. The burly man, Slime's face was cold, and his whole body slowly rose. Whoosh! 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 Behind him, more than a dozen figures also rose up all of a sudden. They exuded powerful spiritual power auras on their bodies, turned into various colors of spiritual power, and flew towards the chaotic city not far away like lightning. In the city of chaos, the atmosphere in the Kongsi family's mansion was extremely tense, with hurried figures walking back and forth in the mansion, giving people an extremely depressing feeling. As silhouettes flashed around the mansion, there were dozens of figures sitting in the meeting hall, deep inside the mansion, and the atmosphere was slightly solemn. Each of these figures exuded a powerful aura, and the one sitting at the front was none other than Renaud, who had just returned from the Cloud Swamp for 2 days. Lord Renaud, we just got the information. The team from the 13 Kingdoms of Nanxia has set off again. I don't know when they will arrive in the hall. Archimedes spoke with worry on his face, but his words still remained. Before he could fully speak, Renaud, who was sitting there, suddenly raised his head. Huh? What a powerful aura, and there's no cover at all. Renaud clearly felt that there were dozens of powerful auras approaching the city of chaos from the east at high speeds. Among them, there were 6 auras that were particularly strong. The strongest one was Renaud, who also felt a little frightened. Don't think so much, they are here. Renaud said in a low voice, with a cold expression. Coming? Everyone in the hall was shocked. Just as they were about to speak, their expressions suddenly changed. Not just Renaud. At this moment, Archimedes, Reagan, Rudolph, Maria, etc. in the dog hall, all the powerful people who reached the 7th level of the Imperial Spiritual Master, had already felt it. Lord Slime, ahead is the City of Chaos. According to intelligence, the mansion of the Kang's family, which controls the territory of Chaos, and the Medicine Master Association are located in the center of the City of Chaos. In the sky, the 3rd Master of the Kyut Kingdom Sharon, a middle-aged man in gold robe who was a 7th level senior Imperial Spiritual Master, spoke respectfully to the slime. He was extremely excited at this moment. Before the arrival of Slime and the others, as the commander-in-chief of the troops of the 13 kingdoms in the Southern Territory, he had been fighting on the Jaw of Chaos battlefield for more than a year, and he finally waited for the day when he could completely capture the Jaw of Chaos. For this day, I have been fighting in the Jaws of Chaos for more than a year. Sharon's face was a little red, and her eyes were like sharp knives as she looked towards the City of Chaos not far away. As the leader of the Chaos Territory, Archimedes has never appeared. I want to see what kind of person this legendary elixir master is. Sharon thought to herself. The slime with short curly brown hair looked at the City of Chaos not far away indifferently, and couldn't help but sigh. This is the City of Chaos? It's really magnificent and majestic. In terms of cities, the entire 13 kingdoms of the Southern Mysteries have not yet a city can match the majesty of this chaotic city. What a pity. After today, such a city will change hands. Slime smiled lightly. Behind him, many strong men were listening to Smoom's orders. Don't waste time. This time we have to fight quickly. I don't have time to wait here, Kong Tun. Slime turned to look at the 2nd master of his kingdom, the 8th level intermediate emperor, spiritual master Kong Tun. Slime. Condon said with a smile. You are completely unexpected. According to the intelligence, there should be no masters of the imperial spiritual master level in the Chaos City. There are only about 10 powerful imperial spiritual masters. You lead them out first and ask them to surrender. If they don't listen except the elixir master, the others will be killed directly, and then they will inquire about the location of the spiritual treasure. Slime gave the order coldly, and then cast his gaze on Sharon beside him. Sharon. Slime Dogman. Sharon respectfully waited for the order. After the battle, you lead the Imperial Spirit Masters to kill all the rebels in the City of Chaos, and then send a team to occupy the City of Chaos. Okay, Kong-tun, take action. Slime said indifferently. Condon's eyes lit up and he immediately flew out of the crowd. Hey, what is that? The appearance of Slime and others made some people who were still outside immediately aware of it. Amid the sounds of surprise, many people couldn't help but look up and saw dozens of small black shadows floating in the sky above the City of Chaos. Then, that seems to be a human being? People with good eyesight couldn't help but scream. Is it the Imperial Spirit Master? Where did he come from? Everyone looked at each other, thinking of a possible one of them, with a hint of horror in their eyes. In the sky, Kong-tun looked at the building in the center of the City of Chaos. A terrible pressure quickly spread out from Kangtun's body. His whole body lit up with a green light, and Kong-tun sneered and stretched out his right hand. Boom! Suddenly, the earth trembled. The violent wind elements rushed from all directions on the ground to the sky above the City of Chaos, forming a huge, giant blue vortex like a millstone above the City of Chaos. From time to time, light blue wind blades escaped from this giant green vortex. Even the original sunlight was blocked. The entire City of Chaos was reflected in the cold cyan. The terrifying cyan vortex continuously emitted terrifying wind blades, aiming at the buildings in the center of the City of Chaos, and slowly covering them down, including the trading center of the City of Chaos, the Kongsi family mansion and General Association of Spiritual Medicine Practitioners. Whoosh! Whoosh! Many figures appeared in the sky above the Kang's family mansion. They were Renault, Archimedes, Reagan, Maria, Rudolph and others. At this moment, the other party the movement was so big and so powerful that everyone in the entire Chaos City felt it. Archimedes, Reagan and everyone else looked up at the sky. In the sky, the cyan whirlpool like a giant millstone is obviously brewing unprecedented terrifying power. The terrifying Emperor-level pressure dissipates. Once the pressure falls, except for Renault, the Emperor Spiritual Master, the other Emperor Spiritual Masters, even Reagan such a 7th-level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master, cannot resist it at all and will die. This huge green vortex was just above their heads, spinning crazily and then stopped. Who among you is Archimedes? Listen to me, lead everyone in the City of Chaos to surrender immediately, and don't make any unnecessary resistance. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude to you. In the sky, Condon said coldly, make a sound. Your Excellency, according to the Continental Peace Treaty and the Twin Towers Agreement, it seems that the 8th-level Emperor Spiritual Master cannot make any mistakes at will in the war. Feeling the terrifying energy spinning above, Renault flew out and faced Condon. Lung Ran spoke out. Continental Peace Treaty and the Twin Towers Agreement? Haha. After hearing Renault's words, Condon was stunned for a moment, and then couldn't help laughing. Continental Peace Treaty? This is the territory of chaos, a place where wars and fighting occur all year round. Are you talking to me about a continental peace treaty? As for the Twin Towers Agreement, it seems that the jaws of chaos and the 13 kingdoms of the southern region are not within the Twin Towers' sphere of influence, right? Even if we really want to be controlled, our 13 kingdoms in the southern region should be controlled by the Sin City, just north of us, not the Twin Towers. Condon, don't talk nonsense. Not far away, Slime said coldly, everyone in the City of Chaos, surrender quickly, otherwise, I, the Slime, will not mind the blood staining the City of Chaos. Reno and the others looked at where Slime and the others were, with cold expressions. He could feel that among the group of people on the other side, there were 6 8th-level Emperor Spiritual Masters. The one with the jaw head among them had the aura on his body. It is even more amazingly powerful. Condon, slime? Isn't this slime the #1 master of the 13 kingdoms in the Southern Territory and an 8th level senior imperial spiritual master? Why are they all here? After hearing the other party reveal his name, Archimedes looked a little ugly. According to their intelligence, among the troops of the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia, the strongest one at present is Sharon from Beatty Kingdom. He is only a 7th level senior imperial spiritual master, so even if he is attacked in the City of Chaos, with Lord Renault there is no need to worry. However, he did not expect that the strongest 8th level imperial spiritual masters of the 13 kingdoms in the southern region, I don't know when I arrived at the Jaw of Chaos. Because Slime and others were so careless in releasing the pressure on themselves, with the strength of Archimedes' 7th level senior imperial spiritual master, they could naturally feel it. It turned out that there were 6 people on the other side whose auras were far superior to his own. It was obvious that all 6 Emperor spiritual masters from the entire 13 kingdoms of Nanxia had arrived. There are 6 imperial spiritual masters, not including the nearly 10 imperial spiritual masters. At this moment, I am afraid that only Reno can remain calm. In the City of Chaos, members of the 3 major families and a large group of people looked up at the dozen or so figures in the distance, their hearts trembling. In their eyes, the dozen or so South Territory 13 people exuding a heart-stopping aura, the strong men of the kingdom are like the invincible gods of war. Powerful and unmatched. It seems that you are not willing to surrender. In that case, get out of here. In the sky, Condon looked coldly and pressed his right hand. The cyan vortex that was originally suspended high above the Kongsi family mansion suddenly sank, and a terrifying aura escaped from it, and then rumbled down. Countless cyan wind blades were densely directed downwards like locusts, so that Archimedes and the others were filled with endless light cyan wind blades. There was a chuckle at the corner of Kangton's mouth. In his imagination, this group of resistors, who were no more than 7th level senior imperial spiritual masters at most, couldn't stop his move for a moment. When the time came, he wouldn't need to use all his strength, and they would be able to do it one by one. He was seriously injured and fell down. If he caught the elixir master and asked about the spiritual treasure, his trip to the City of Chaos would be over. Koning. Faced with Condon's attack, Renault snorted coldly. He was originally ordinary, and his body suddenly burst into golden light. Buzz. An invisible light golden ripple suddenly enveloped the entire City of Chaos, and then boom. The long sword in his hand stabbed out and instantly turned into a golden giant sword that held up the sky. This golden sword, there were mysterious golden secrets flowing on the giant sword, exuding astonishing pressure, and then under the control of Renault, it suddenly penetrated into the middle of the giant cyan whirlpool. Bow. A golden ripple rippled in the giant azure vortex, and then boom. A shocking explosion suddenly came out in the azure vortex. The vortex kept twisting and exploded with a bang, filling the sky. The cyan wind blades, like raindrops, splashed in all directions, and some of them shot towards the bottom of the City of Chaos, and then hit the pale golden ripples released by Renault one after another. Chong. 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 The sound of Jinga clashing sounded, and the skywide wind blade, which was powerful enough to easily cut through the 6th level spiritual master and injure the 7th level imperial spiritual master, hit the golden on the ripples were not damaged at all. Oh my God! Countless people in the City of Chaos looked up at the transparent golden ripples covering the entire sky above. They all clearly saw the endless cyan wind blades flying past, hitting the golden ripples one by one, and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. If it weren't for the golden ripples, the cyan wind blades all over the sky would have shot into the city, causing a dog killed and injured. The endless cyan wind blades dispersed, and Renault also retracted the golden ripples. What? An 8th level imperial spiritual master? Kongdon looked at Renault with a livid face. Are you Nale? Then, his expression became extremely ferocious. what about an 8th level Imperial Spiritual Master? Chong. A long and narrow green sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Go to hell. One of the secrets of the wind is that the circle will burst into pieces. The wind elements within a radius of 1 kilometer, at this moment, it suddenly condensed crazily, and then formed a cyan arc, aiming at Renault and flying past like lightning. Call out. The cyan arc broke through the void and flew towards Renault with tremors. Wherever it went, a hole was immediately opened in the space, revealing the dark space turbulence. Humph. Renault snorted coldly. A series of misty golden lights suddenly condensed around Renault's body, forming a golden ball. In the middle of the ball, countless extremely sharp golden spiritual powers were like sword snakes. A unique pattern is constantly circulating, and murderous intentions are everywhere. The 5th form of the secret method of basic mastery of the metal spiritual master is space cutting. Suddenly, a ball of light burst out from Renault's eyes, and the powerful metal spiritual power exploded like an ignited explosive barrel. Buzz 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 buzz. Amidst the trembling sound of spiritual power, the void collapsed, revealing dark cracks in space. Countless golden sword snakes were like a heavenly net wrapping the entire world. Then, countless golden sword shadows intersected in an instant, condensed into a huge golden sword rainbow, and aimed at the cyan arc opposite. Boom! 2 extremely powerful spiritual powers collided together, and the terrifying spiritual power exploded. In Condon's shocked eyes, the Ewing concrack he used with all his strength was struck by Renault's golden sword rainbow. After cutting it off, it suddenly broke into pieces. The golden sword rainbow penetrated the void and came to Kong Tun in an instant. Promoted! Kong Dun roared in disbelief. His erratic figure wanted to get out of the way, but he found that this whole world was locked by the other party. In the crisis, he could only use the long cyan in his hand. The sword was blocked in front of him like lightning. Boom! Kong Tun was thrown away all of a sudden, his face turned pale. He stood unsteadily in front of Slime and the others. Just as he was about to speak, a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Back then, when Renault was an 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritualist, he was able to defeat Lyndon, the patriarch of the Decker family, who was an 8th level Intermediate Emperor Spiritualist. Now that he has been promoted to an 8th level Intermediate Emperor Spiritualist, Renault is even stronger. Lord Lei is mighty. Lord Lei. Some people below had long recognized Renault. When they saw Renault repelling the strong man from the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia with one sword, they clenched their hands in excitement. A shout came out of his mouth. Seeing this scene, the faces of Slime and others from the 13 kingdoms of the Southern Territory were filled with surprise, and at the same time, there was also a hint of joy in the depths of their eyes. Are you that Lei? Slime looked down at Renault. You have good strength. I will give you a chance to tell you the location of the spiritual treasure and tell us to enter now. I can spare your life. So it's because of this. Slime's words immediately made Renault understand the reason why such a large group of people showed up. His expression was indifferent and he snorted coldly. Slime, you are dreaming. It seems that you are not. I'm willing. Slime's face darkened, then a ferocious smile appeared on his face, and he looked at the other Imperial Spirit Masters beside him. Whoosh! 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 Including Kong Tun, 6 Imperial Spiritual Masters from the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia flew out at the same time and surrounded Renault. They all turned over and took out their respective weapons. I know you are pretty strong, but no matter how strong you are, can you stop the 6 of us? Slime said with a sinister smile on his face. Although the strength that Renault had shown previously was powerful, it could only barely reach the level of an 8th level senior Emperor Spiritualist. However, among the 6 people present, Slime himself was an authentic 8th level senior Emperor Spiritualist. 3 8th level Intermediate Emperor Spiritual Masters and 2 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritual Masters. The 6 of them joined forces and have no fear of anyone. Shameless. Seeing this scene, Archimedes, who was not far away, couldn't help shouting in anger, and the people below also started to curse. Although they trust Renaud very much, after all, Renaud only advanced to the intermediate level of Emperor Spiritualist last year, and Fangguang Slime is an 8th level senior Emperor Spiritualist. There are so many Emperor Spiritualist masters joining forces, and the 6 of them can deal with Renaud together. Renaud is afraid that shameless? A cold smile appeared on the corner of Slime's mouth. He didn't realize there was anything shameless about it. He looked at Renaud, and the sword in his hand buzzed and trembled. A terrible pressure came naturally from above. It spread out and directly tore apart the space. Earth-level high-grade spiritual weapon. Renaud's expression changed slightly. Kong Tun and the others also suddenly activated the power in their bodies and looked at Renaud with a sneer. Since you don't accept my kindness, then Slime looked at Renaud indifferently, suffered death. After Slime's words fell, the sword in his hand was cut down mercilessly, and beside him, Nanchao 10 the remaining 5 8th level Emperor spiritual masters of the 3 kingdoms also moved. Various kinds of spiritual power light suddenly rose from their bodies. They waved their weapons and aimed at Renaud's location to attack fiercely. For a moment, spiritual power surged like waves, sweeping across the entire world and engulfing Renaud. Boom! 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 The shocking explosion resounded over the entire city of chaos. Archimedes, Reagan, Rudolph, Maria, and others, as well as those on the ground, countless people looked at this scene in shock, their faces pale. Sharon and the other nearly 10 imperial spiritual masters from the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia were suspended in the sky far away, looking at the brutal battlefield with smiles. Fiery red fire elements, golden metal elements, khaki earth elements, cyan wind elements, green water elements, all kinds of elemental colors filled the sky, and the terrifying pressure was raging, threatening. Wrapped in trembling power, it destroys everything. In the astonishing explosion, Renaud, who had been flying across the sky, was suddenly thrown out from the attacks all over the sky. He gritted his teeth and looked quite embarrassed. The golden robe on his body was also somewhat damaged. Lord Renaud. Archimedes spoke nervously. Because of the shock wave generated by the battle between the 2 sides, they, like Sharon and the others from the 13 kingdoms in the southern region, also retreated to a safe distance. In the sky, Renaud looked at Slime and the others coldly, his face a little ugly. Although he was strong, he had only been promoted to the 8th level intermediate Emperor spiritual master for a year. If he fought alone, he would not be afraid, but one person facing the siege of the 6 imperial spiritual masters, it was somewhat difficult to withstand and surrounded by dangers. Haha, as expected, there were 2 moments. Yes, yes. I heard that when you first entered the Jaw of Chaos, you were only a 7th level low-level Emperor spiritual master. However, since you entered the palace of the spiritual god, your strength has improved by leaps and bounds. In just a few short days, the Emperor spiritual master who has been promoted to the 8th level of intermediate level in 2016, and the strength he has shown now is far beyond the average intermediate Emperor spirit master. The stronger you are, the more excited I am, haha. Slime looked down at Renaud with a cruel smile on his lips. Do it. Slime shouted loudly. His figure swayed like a phantom and crossed the sky in the blink of an eye. The sword in his hand was aimed at Renaud and slashed fiercely, tearing the space. On the side, Kong Dun and the other 5 also took action at the same time. Huge wind blades, roaring water dragons, sharp golden swords, roaring fire dragons, all kinds of powerful attacks, packed with the power of destroying everything, were aimed at Renaud, fierce and unparalleled. Lord Renaud. Seeing this scene, Archimedes and others exclaimed, clenching their fists, and their hearts suddenly rose to their throats. His eyes were filled with worry. Archimedes hated his own incompetence. Although he had the strength of a 7th level high-level elixir master, due to the backwardness of the Chaos territory, he did not have many elixir formulas for imperial elixirs and could only prepare them. Some of the simplest imperial-level elixirs. These elixirs can only be effective on mid-level and low-level imperial spiritualists such as Dias, but they are of little help to mid-level imperial spiritualists like Renault. Moreover, because of the scarcity of materials, even if they have the formula, Archimedes was also unable to prepare it. In such a battle, they could only watch Lord Renault fight to the death, but could not do much to help. This made Archimedes feel so painful that he could only pray silently. In the sky, a terrifying and powerful attack suddenly arrived in front of Renault. Facing this attack, Renault's expression was indifferent, and a golden light suddenly appeared in his solemn golden pupils. Boom! An unparalleled pressure suddenly burst out from his body, and the astonishing momentum dissipated. Renault's whole body glowed with golden light, and a strong aura continued to rise from his body. Buzz! Countless golden sword shadows flew out from Renault's body, and thousands of golden lights appeared over the entire city of chaos. Countless sword shadows floated for a while, and the original power of the golden law emerged in the entire sky, and then with the combination of spiritual power released by Renault instantly condensed into a world. The sixth form of the basic secret technique of the metal spiritual master, the world of swords. In the sky, countless golden glows were like thousands of golden swords flying in the air, constantly turning, and with a slight tremor, the terrifying power of the metal dispersed. It seems that the space is distorted. Sword of the world, Ning. Renault's eyes glowed with divine light, and he shouted loudly. Boom! 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 The world of swords covering half of the sky shrunk rapidly. Countless golden sword energies continued to shrink and condense, and then condensed into a nearly 10-meter-long sword in front of Renault. Huge, golden sword. Renault waved his giant sword, and his whole figure looked like a golden god of war, aiming at the surrounding attacks and slashing them down. Boom! 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 Explosions sounded all over the sky, and a huge spiritual storm swept everything. Renault was in this spiritual storm, constantly floating up and down, like a leaf blowing in the wind, and like a sailboat heaving in the storm on the sea, but never destroyed. Ah! Renault roared. After breaking through the joint attack of the 6 people, Zhuang Rua rushed towards the 6 imperial spiritual masters who surrounded him, and Hu Zhong's golden giant sword kept slashing down. World of Swords. Seeing this scene, Slime and others showed shock on their faces. What did this lay get in the palace of the spirit god? And he actually displayed World of Swords. In shock, the other 5 emperor spiritual masters, except Slime, kept retreating, and could only temporarily avoid Renault's edge. Lord Renault. Not far away, Archimedes and others couldn't help but feel surprised. Archimedes, hurry up, take the people and escape first. However, at this moment, Renault's anxious voice rang through Archimedes' mind. Archimedes' heart trembled. The enemy this time is too strong. My sword of the world won't last long. Renault said anxiously. This sword of the world was something he just realized after he was promoted to the 8th level intermediate emperor spiritual master. Although he could gain a slight upper hand for the time being, it would not last long. Not to mention that Slime was not afraid of his world sword at all, and Renault had no confidence at all. This Archimedes was extremely hesitant. Hurry up, leave the jaws of chaos, go to the northwest countries, and find Jason. Renault resisted with difficulty and said in an angry voice, you go first. When the time comes, I will also escape. They may not be able to catch up with my speed. Escape. Archimedes looked ferocious and angrily transmitted the message to everyone. In an instant, Archimedes, Reagan, Rudolph, Maria, and everyone else immediately ran away in all directions. They all wanted to escape in a short time. Escape from this combat zone. Only in this way can you temporarily save your life. Want to escape? A loud voice came down from high in the sky. When one of the Emperor's spiritual masters saw this scene, he shouted coldly, and the spears in his hands instantly turned into shadows. Buzz! Countless golden gun shadows fell densely like raindrops. Go back! Renault roared, blocking all the opponent's attacks. However, there was this pause. One by one, boom. The famous Imperial Spiritual Master, under the leadership of Sharon, instantly surrounded Archimedes and others from all directions. Sharon looked at Archimedes and others with a sneer on her face. Today, none of you can escape. Archimedes and others stopped flying instantly, feeling despair in their hearts. Go to hell. When Renault saw this scene, he immediately rushed down with a giant sword, aiming at Sharon and others. Huh. At this moment, the slime stood in front of Renault in an instant. The sword in his hand tore through the space and collided with Renault's world sword. Bang! Both sides retreated tens of meters. Sharon, stop them, don't let any of them escape. Slime shouted coldly, and then looked coldly at Renault, who was charging forward with the world sword. The world sword, although it is powerful, but he is not invincible. Everyone, don't hold back, use mystical attacks to break him. As Slime's words fell, the 5 Emperor spiritual masters surrounding Renault all had powerful energy rising in their bodies. Aura, wielding Huzhong's weapon. One of the mysteries of the wind element, a circle of sky splitting. One of the mysteries of the water element, a torrent. One of the mysteries of the gold element, 10,000 swords, pierce the sky. One of the mysteries of the fire element, the flame dragon, burns the sky. One of the secrets of the earth is the black Yu spear formation. 5 color rays of light bloomed from the 5 imperial spiritual masters of the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia. They all roared and aimed at Renault and launched a fierce attack. All the spiritual elements above the entire jaw of chaos were violent at this moment. A huge wind blade cutting through the space, a torrent like a dog river, a golden sword rainbow filling the sky, a roaring flame dragon, a black spear formation filling the sky. 5 mysterious attacks were aimed at Renault. Renault went crazy, roaring angrily, and slashed down the giant sword in his hand. Boom! 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 The world sword in Renault Huzhong split the opponent's 5 mysterious attacks in succession, and the world sword, which originally exuded a powerful aura, cracks suddenly appeared. Haha, break it for me. Slime, who had been gathering momentum at the side, grinned ferociously. He suddenly came to Renault and waved the sword in his hand. A misty and huge sword shadow emerged from the sword in the slime's body. Blooming, the huge sword shadow collided with the sword of the world. Pung! The already fragile sword of the world shattered in an instant. Renault's body shook violently, and blood spurted out from his mouth. The golden robe on his body was shattered and crumbling. Haha, let's see how you can block it now. Slime looked ferocious, with a hint of madness in his eyes. Die. The shadow of the knife, wrapped in boundless spiritual power, cut through the void and came to the top of Renault's head in an instant. Lord Renault. Not far away, Archimedes and others. Zhongdu let out a roar of grief and anger. Below, all the people in the city of chaos closed their eyes in despair, while Sharon and others on the side had a smile on their faces. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Stop. At this critical moment, a roar like thunder came from afar, and with this roar, boom. A 5-color stream of light flew from the distant sky like a meteor. The spiritual elements in the entire world were violent at this moment. Wherever the 5-color stream of light went, a huge hole was torn open in the space, revealing the dark space turbulence. The entire sky seemed to be here. It collapsed under the terrifying stream of light. The speed of this stream of light was simply astonishing. When the roar sounded, it was still far away in the sky. However, after the roar fell, it instantly came to the sky above the center of the Chaos City and shot towards the slime like a cannonball. What? Slime was shocked, and a strong sense of crisis instantly rose from the bottom of his heart. At this critical moment, Slime no longer cared about killing Renault in front of him. The sword in his hand changed direction instantly, and the huge sword's shadow collided with the rushing 5-color attack. Pung! The huge sword shadow released from the slime sword suddenly collapsed, and his body continued to retreat in response to the shock. In the distance, a figure was crossing the space like lightning. At this moment, everyone present turned their heads and looked at the figure that was approaching quickly. Hearing this voice, feeling the familiar aura, his body was hurt, and Renaud, who had just escaped the disaster, immediately showed an excited expression on his face, and flew towards the place where the figure came from at high speed. Slime stabilized his figure in the air, with a trace of solemnity on his face. He ignored the figure that flew by like lightning in the distance, but focused his gaze on Renaud, who had escaped. Don't even think about escaping. From the previous 5-color attack, Slime felt that the other party was not easy to mess with. He didn't want Renaud to merge with the figure. His eyes were full of endless murderous intent, and at the same time, he rushed desperately. He rushed towards Renaud, trying to kill Renaud before the figure arrived. Seeing Slime's movements, Renaud looked stern and slashed desperately with the long sword in his hand. Hey! A giant golden sword rainbow rushed out from Renaud's sword. Humph! Slime grunted, the sword in his hand trembled, splitting the sword rainbow instantly, and at the same time, he rushed towards Renaud again. Under the previous attacks from the 5 mysteries and Slime's sword, the internal organs in Renaud's body were severely damaged. His strength was greatly reduced, and he could not block Slime's attack at all. I told you, stop it. A rumbling roar sounded across the sky and the earth. In the distance, when the 5-colored figures saw this scene, they almost uttered words in their mouths, and a voice full of murderous intent descended on that scene. The figure suddenly started the flamethrower like a racing car and suddenly accelerated above the original top speed. At the same time, it aimed at the slime's location in the distance and took action. Boom! Dozens of 5-color rays of light shot directly at the slime from a distance. Block his attack! Slime roared at the remaining 5 Emperor Spiritualists, while rushing towards Renaud desperately. Whoosh! 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 5 figures flew out at the same time, blocking the dozens of 5-color rays of light, and the slime instantly arrived in front of Renaud. The terrifying murderous intention spread, and a misty huge knife shadow emerged from the slime's sword again. It spread out and slashed towards Renaud mercilessly. Pung! A scene that shocked everyone happened. Facing the dozens of 5-color rays of light, the 5 Contons did not even block a single one of them. They only blocked less than 10 5-color rays of light. All at once. They were thrown away, their faces pale, and the 2 weakest low-level Emperor Spiritual Masters even had blood overflowing from the corners of their mouths. There were more than 10 rays of 5-color light left, covering the slime from all directions. Huh? Slime's face was shocked, and a strong sense of crisis filled his heart. He didn't care about chasing Renaud anymore. He didn't dare to be too big, and immediately tried to avoid it with his speed, but these dozens of 5-color rays of light failed. Although he could turn, Slime could only use his sword to attack those 5-colored rays of light. Pung! 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 Continuous explosions sounded, and the slime's body continued to retreat in the air. It did not stop until all the 5-color rays of light were blocked. His expression changed. He was pale, and the 8th-level advanced spiritual power in his body was constantly surging, making him almost breathless. Whoosh! After such a pause, the 5-color figure suddenly rushed outside the Chaos City. The speed of this 5-color figure was so terrifying that even the powerful Emperor Spirit Masters could only vaguely saw the 5-color light flashing across the sky, and immediately my heart was filled with turmoil. 5-color rays of light passed through the space. In just a short moment, they shot into the city from outside the distant city. In the last flash of light, a figure with 5-color rays of light all over its body appeared in the sky like a ghost in the battle circle, and the place where it stands is clearly in front of Renaud. Although it sounds like a long story, it actually only took 2 or 3 seconds from the roaring sound and the mysterious man of 5 colors to appear in front of Renaud. After the five-colored figure appeared, it paid no attention to Slime and the others, but looked straight at Renault in the sky. Renault, on the other hand, looked at the other party blankly, with the corners of his mouth trembling slightly and his eyes full of excitement. At this moment, everyone in the entire city of Chaos was stunned. The atmosphere that had been tense and critical before was suddenly suffocated. Everyone stared blankly at the five-colored figure that suddenly appeared, full of surprise and uncertainty. Surrounded by Sharon and others, Archimedes and others were also stunned and didn't know why. However, what was different from Reagan and the others was that after being stunned for a moment, Archimedes's surprised eyes quickly turned. It was replaced by excitement, and the body began to tremble involuntarily. For a time, countless eyes were focused on the five-colored figure and Renault. "Father! Jason!" Both parties trembled in their mouths, and then hugged each other heavily under the astonished eyes of countless people. 2 years apart, father and son reunited, and their endless thoughts were forever reflected in these eyes, leaving them speechless and choked. "Father, I'm sorry, I'm late." Seeing Renault's embarrassment with blood on the corner of his mouth, Jason's eyes showed distress. Immediately, the wood spirit beads in Jason's mind began to spin rapidly, and the wood spiritual elements containing rich vitality were suddenly transmitted from Jason's right hand to Renault's body full of wounds. Under the rich vitality of the wood element, Renault's body was quickly healed. Although it was not completely cured, it was much better than before. "Your Excellency, I dare to ask who it is. Hiding one's head and showing one's tail is nothing." Opposite, Slime stood proudly in the sky and shouted coldly with a gloomy face, while Kong Tun and other 5 Emperor spiritual masters gathered around him, with pale faces. All with a hint of surprise. Hearing the Slime's cold shout, the five-colored figure turned around slightly. His cold, murderous eyes suddenly enveloped the 6 Slimes, and the five-colored light on his body slowly dissipated. Looking at this scene, all the people in the entire city of Chaos stared at the sky without blinking. They were all extremely curious about this mysterious strong man who suddenly appeared, who seemed to be Lord Lei's son. And at the same time, my heart was full of excitement. At this moment, when the top masters of the 13 kingdoms in the southern region invaded, the powerful power shown by the five-colored figures made them all excited and excited. Of course, it is not just ordinary people in these chaotic cities who have such thoughts. Sharon and others also stared at the boss's eyes and stared at the figure. As for Archimedes, who was surrounded by them, the others, long before Renault called out Jason, were already trembling with excitement and tears filled their eyes. Under the blazing gaze of countless eyes, the light on the body of the five-colored figure gradually dissipated, and the thin figure among them slowly appeared in everyone's sight. In the sky, Archimedes was staring at the figure. After seeing the familiar back, his excited eyes suddenly became moist, and the hot tears flowed unscrupulously from his eyes. Down. The endless light dissipated, and in the sky, a black-haired young man with a black heavy sword on his back was floating there quietly, staring coldly at Slime and others with eyes filled with cold murderous intent. Jaws of Chaos, Jace, have you ever heard of it? A light word, but like a hurricane, it roared through everyone's heart. There was no noise. The originally silent city of Chaos now seemed dead. The excessive silence gave people a suffocating feeling. However, at this moment, all the people in the city of Chaos were completely unaware. They all stared blankly at the familiar face in the sky with dull expressions. With long black hair, black eyes, blue-gray robes, and a thin body carrying a black heavy sword, he stood proudly in the air, with no extra expressions, no extra words, and no extra movements, but he seemed to be transformed into the only one in the whole world, eternal and everlasting. Jess, Master Jace in the silent and chaotic city, I don't know who the knot is. If it can't be considered complete, it is like a fuse, and it suddenly detonates the whole thing. A city. Boom. The sudden sound was like a high iron mountain suspended in the air, but it suddenly lost its support and suddenly fell from a height of tens of thousands of meters. The moment it hit the ground, it suddenly scattered. The impact swept through the entire city in an instant, causing everyone's hearts to contract unbearably and the expressions on their faces to completely freeze. Jace the Dogman, Lord Jace. It's Master Jace here. The actual person in charge of the Jaws of Chaos, the president of the Spiritual Medicine Master Association, the master of Master Lay. At that time all the people in the City of Chaos were excited. Their faces were flushed, their eyes were wide open, they could hardly breathe, and they were just stunned. He stared blankly at the figure in the sky. That is the true leader of the entire Jaws of Chaos. The entire City of Chaos was completely boiling at this moment. The city, which was originally full of discouragement and despair, now seemed to be reborn, showing vigorous vitality. Countless people throughout the city cheered loudly. Just because of him. Master Jace. Endless memories, in an instant, surged from the hearts of all the people in the City of Chaos. Almost all the people in the City of Chaos still clearly remember that year, the two people, Jace Dogman and Lord Lay, were in chaos. He looked so heroic and invincible in the battle against Daimler and the other 4 Imperial Spiritual Masters. They still remember that when Master Jace, who was still a young man, had a duel with the elixir of Pierre, the leader of the Curie family, known as the #1 elixir of the Jaws of Chaos, he prepared an Imperial-level elixir that caused chaos in the world. Elephant scene. Although, today's opponents are stronger than the major families of the Jaw of Chaos back then. The top masters of the 13 kingdoms of the south, Slime and others, are all 8th level Emperor spiritual masters. However, Jason's unexpected appearance earlier, and his heroic performance in defeating Slime and others in a matter of seconds, made all the people in the City of Chaos full of confidence in him. Master. Archimedes choked out while surrounded by Sharon and others. Lord Jason. Master Gandalf was also extremely excited. Lord Jason. Lord Jason. Chief Reagan, Elder Maria, all the Imperial Spirit Masters of the Jaws of Chaos also looked at Jason excitedly. Archimedes, Master is late, everyone, Jason is late. Jason turned to look at Archimedes, his eyes full of relief. He hadn't seen him for several years, but his eldest disciple did not let him disappointed, and everyone in the Jaws of Chaos did not let themselves down. What about Jace and Jason? Brat, are you the so-called leader of the Chaos Territory, Jace? You're just a little baby. I don't know how excited you people are. Looking at Jason from the sky, Slime sneered. Father, please step back a little. These annoying things are here. It's simply off-putting. I'll get rid of this place first before we get together with everyone. After hearing Slime's words, Jason he spoke to Renaud behind him, then turned his head. His originally gentle gaze suddenly became as cold as ice. Arrogant boy, it's not certain who will win or lose today. Slime sneered, and looked at the people around him. Whoosh! 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 Condon and others immediately surrounded Jason in the center, and all 6 of them erupted with terrifying imperial power. Jason seeing this scene, Renaud's there was a trace of solemnity on his face, and he was about to fly over. Previously, he suffered a big loss under the siege of these 6 people. Although Renaud was quite confident in Jason who had joined the Elixir Master Tower, the other party after all, there are 6 of them, and among them, the Slime, who is an 8th level senior Imperial Spiritual Master, is even more powerful. Renaud can feel that this Slime is definitely powerful even among the 8th level senior Imperial Spiritual Masters. Existence makes people worry. Father, no need. Jason waved and stopped Renaud from stepping forward. His eyes were filled with an icy cold light. They are just a few clowns. Father, just watch from the side and see how I do it for you. Revenge arrogant. Slime shouted loudly, and then he took action brazenly. An indescribably powerful coercion suddenly rose from the Slime, and the terrifying earth spiritual power surged, submerging the entire world. The sword in his heart trembled, and was aimed at Jason's location. It was cut down hard. One of the secrets of the earth cuts through the sky with one sword. A black sword light that was more than 10 feet long was aimed at Jason and struck hard. When Slime took action, the other 5 Imperial spiritual masters surrounding Jason had powerful auras rising from their bodies, their faces were ferocious, and they also waved the weapons in their hands. One of the mysteries of the wind element, the round sky splits. One of the mysteries of the water element is the torrent. One of the mysteries of the gold element is that 10,000 swords pierce the sky. One of the mysteries of the fire element is the flame dragon burning the sky. One of the mysteries of the earth is the raging torrent. One black U-spear formation. 5 color rays of light bloomed from them. Jason's attack when he arrived earlier made them all know that although Jason looked young, his strength was truly unfathomable. Therefore, at taking action, these 5 people all used their killing moves without any hesitation. Boom! The 6 Imperial spiritual masters each used their own mysterious skills and aimed at Jason at the same time, especially the attack of Slime. The aura of one person was stronger than that of the other 5, and the terrible pressure was completely dispersed. The sky seemed to collapse. Seeing the momentum of these 6 people, Renault's expression suddenly changed. The other party's attacks at this moment were more severe than when he fought with him before. Before, even as an 8th-level intermediate Emperor spiritual master, he used Sword World. It was impossible to block the combined blow of these 6 people, and the Slime had not used all his strength before, and the others did not fight desperately like now. Now, facing this shocking blow, can Jason block it? Not only Reno, but Archimedes and others also showed worry on their faces. It was really that the pressure released by Slime and others was too terrifying. Just feeling the terrifying power from a distance was enough to make everyone feel worried. Their bodies could not help but tremble. In the sky, facing these 6 mysterious attacks, Jason stood proudly in the sky like a spear. His body suddenly moved. A dazzling light burst out from his eyes. The spiritual god art in his body drove powerful spiritual power. The god-destroying killing technique was also mobilized at once, and terrifying spiritual power soared into the sky. Chong! The black ape behind Jason suddenly drew out, and 5-color divine light bloomed from his body, like a 5-color god of war. His eyes were cold, and the black ape in his hand was aimed at the 5 mysteries surrounding him. The child split out. God-destroying technique, triple combat power, break the 5 elements law for me. Boom! 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 Wherever the black heavy sword in Jason's hand touched, Kongtun the mysterious attacks released by the others were all scattered one after another, unable to withstand Jason's pace at all. In the end, the black ape and the dozens of feet of black sword light released by the Slime came into contact heavily. Together. Pung! A scene that shocked everyone happened. Under the slash of Jason's black heavy sword, the black sword light released by the Slime kept trembling in the void. Then, with a pung sound, it turned into earth elements, filled the sky, and dissipated into the air. What? Slime was shocked and retreated violently. Jason did not pursue, but aimed his sword at the second master of the Choka Kingdom, the 8th-level intermediate Wind Emperor, Kongdun. Phew! The black ape shot through the sky and came directly to Kangtun's head. Wings of wind! Kongdun was shocked. A transparent wing of wind suddenly appeared behind him. He wanted to avoid Jason's attack, but he found that the entire world was blocked, endless. The coercion was covering him from all directions, and it was difficult for him, an 8th-level intermediate wind-type Emperor Spirit Master, to avoid it. The black ape came to Kangtun's head, and a huge hole opened in the space, covering Kongtun. Block it! Guardian Shield of the Wind Element! Seeing this astonishing space crack, Kongdun was horrified. He shouted loudly and held the long sword in front of him. A dazzling cyan light bloomed from Kangtun's body, forming a huge transparent shield of the wind system in front of him. Misty wind elements were released from the transparent shield, and various mysterious flows representing the laws of the wind system were released. guard Condon. Boom. In an instant, the black heavy sword in Jason's hand collided heavily with the cyan shield. The cyan shield kept trembling, and the spiritual patterns and talismans on the surface continued to explode, and space ripples rippled out from the edges. Ah! Behind the shield, Condon roared, his face flushed, his whole body trembling, and the wind spiritual power in his body was released desperately at this moment, trying to resist Jason's attack. Humph! Jason snorted coldly, with divine light blooming in his eyes. God-killing technique, 3 times the combat power, die. As his words fell, the black heavy sword suddenly bloomed with a helpless energy. The power to resist. Pung! A deafening roar sounded. In Condon's extremely horrified eyes, the constantly trembling green shield in front of him suddenly appeared cracks like fragile glass, and then shattered suddenly. The black heavy sword in Jason's hand slashed off the top of his head, and his head with a look of horror on his face was instantly blasted into nothingness. Countless wind elements suddenly collapsed, and Kangton's headless body suddenly fell from the sky. No! Condon! On the side, Slime and others shouted, while looking at Jason with anger or fear. Don't be anxious, it will be your turn soon. In his cold words, Jason was like a god king. His eyes were cold, and he controlled the entire sky. After killing Condon with one sword, he aimed it without any hesitation. An old man in grey robe on the side punched out. The moment Jason's left fist hit the ground, there was only a rumbling sound in the space. The space shook violently wherever he waved his left arm. The punch comes out like a dragon coming out of its cave. After punching out, a large number of spatial ripples appeared on the edge of Jason's fist, which were constantly twisting like wrinkles and were directly transmitted to the old man in grey robe. Pung! 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 The sound that shook the soul, the space ripples exploded directly during the transmission, revealing a long black hole. Through the hole, some raging space turbulence could be clearly seen. Ah! The golden net of the Earth's mysteries protects the body. Facing Jason's attack, the grey-robed old man was horrified and roared in anger. The Earth element within a kilometer radius suddenly became violent, and on his body surface it formed a layer of armor that exuded metallic luster. But it was useless. Under Jason's attack, the armor on the grey-robed old man's body collapsed instantly, and a huge hole appeared in his chest. Blood spurted out from his mouth. His eyes instantly lost their luster, and his whole body people fall from the sky. In an instant, another 8th-level low-level emperor spiritual master fell. Stone. Stone. Seeing the old man, who was killed by Jason with one punch, the remaining people roared in shock, looking at Jason standing there proudly, their bodies trembling uncontrollably. With one sword strike, the second master of the Dick Kingdom, Kong Dun, an 8th-level intermediate wind-type imperial spiritual master, fell. With one punch, Sherdong, the top master of the Wukong Kingdom and an 8th-level low-level earth element imperial spiritual master, fell. The remaining 3 people, Dustin, Hoffman, and DeVito, all looked at Jason with fear on their faces. These 2 people were as famous as themselves in the 13 kingdoms of Nansha. Being killed by the black-haired young man in just a moment made their hearts tremble and become cold. Renault, who was behind Jason, was also completely dumbfounded. Looking at Jason standing proudly in the sky like an unparalleled god king, his heart was filled with joy. In the sky, Jason stood there proudly, with the cool wind blowing his long hair, and a pair of cold eyes looking directly at the 4 remaining slimes. Damn it, what should we do now? Looking at Jason standing proudly in the sky, Dustin and the 3 of them looked at Slime with frightened eyes, already thinking of retreating in their hearts. Now, they can only place their hopes on Slime. Humph, what can I do? He's just a brat. I'm here to kill him. You 3, go kill that Thunder and the group of Imperial spiritual masters in the City of Chaos. Slime said fiercely. Voice. Dustin and the 3 looked at each other. Whoosh. Whoosh. Huanso. The three of them flew out like lightning and flew towards where Archimedes and the others were. They did not dare to fight Jason directly now. Everyone, please take action and kill everyone in this chaotic city. The three of them shouted fiercely with ferocious faces. As he finished speaking, Sharon and nearly 10 imperial spiritual masters from the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia, who had previously surrounded Archimedes, all roared and waved the weapons in their hands, exuding powerful auras. Stop! Renaud shouted angrily and wanted to rush forward, but was suddenly surrounded by Dustin and the other three. The terrible attack hit Renaud instantly, and Renaud could only resist with his sword. Boom! An astonishing explosion sounded. Renaud was fighting with Dustin and 3 other Emperor spiritual masters. Fortunately, after Jason's previous treatment, Renaud's combat effectiveness had been restored to more than half. Although he had not recovered, but with the help of his opponent, the profound understanding of the laws of the metal system was able to withstand the siege of Dustin and Hoffman, the 2 8th-level intermediate imperial spiritual masters, and DeVito, the 8th-level low-level imperial spiritual master. Humph. Not far away, Jason snorted coldly when he saw this scene, and his body transformed and he wanted to take action, but he saw Slime suddenly coming in front of him, looking at Jason with cold eyes, his eyes endless. Murderous intent. It's me you're dealing with. Those who killed me, the 13 kingdoms of Nanxia, you brat, just die. After the words fell, he took action brazenly. A deep, heavy power suddenly revived from the slime's body. The terrifying power dissipated, and a giant-like fuzzy shadow appeared behind him, exuding a throbbing coercion. The slime roared angrily and raised the sword in his hand, a misty shadow emitting from the black sword. The domineering imperial sword, dominating the world, the imperial sword is born, invincible. After Jason's previous actions, Slime already knew that although Jason looked young, his strength was unfathomable, so as soon as he took action, it was a display of his own unique magical power. He roared in his mouth, and the black sword in his hand vibrated in the void, like an ancient magic mountain that was constantly growing, piercing the sky. It was no longer like the phantom when fighting Renaud, but transformed into a tower dozens of feet high. The solid giant sword exudes a gleaming brilliance. The entire blade of the sword flows with divine light, exuding a shocking power. It overlaps with the shadow of the giant behind the slime, as if the giant is holding a sword and standing proudly. Die. On the opposite side, the slime roared, clasped his hands together, and chopped down with all his strength. Boom. Behind Slime, there was a tall figure with endless majesty. He suddenly opened his eyes. The earth element between the sky and the earth instantly went violent, reaching a height of more than 10 feet, like a small mountain, and the black sword as small as a dog was thrown at Slime. Under the control of Mu, he aimed at Jason and struck him in the head. Buzz. The void trembled, and the tyrannical earth's spiritual power was everywhere. The sky above the entire chaotic city seemed to be at the end of the world for a moment, and the aura was so powerful that it made people's hearts tremble. Get out of my way! Looking at Renaud, Archimedes, and others who were under siege not far away, Jason suddenly roared, and all the pores in his body were filled with electricity and shot out colorful gods. Light, a 5-color divine rainbow, as thick as a bucket bloomed from his hand, illuminating the entire world. An unconcealable pressure spread out from his body, and the black heavy sword stabbed at Slee. Mu. 5 elements rotation. 5 times the combat power. The god-destroying technique circulated in Jason's body, and he suddenly displayed 5 times the combat power. Boom. The black heavy sword in Jason's hand collided with the black sword in the slime's hand. An astonishing explosion sounded in the sky. Jason and Slime retreated, and they were evenly matched. What? Slime said in shock, and Jason was also slightly stunned. The weapons in both sides' hands were swung again, and the dark swords and the heavy swords blooming with 5 colors of divine light were constantly colliding. Boom. 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 Two weapons, containing different powers, frighteningly fast, fighting again and again, like two peerless masters, they almost attack each other. Why is this kid so strong? Slime couldn't help but frown when he saw that he couldn't gain the upper hand in the battle with Jason when he used the Overlord's sword with all his strength. And Jason was a little anxious looking at his father, who was besieged by Dustin and others not far away, and Archimedes, who was besieged by Sharon and others. This slime was quite powerful, even at the 8th level. Among the senior Imperial spiritual masters, he was not a weakling. Jason used the god-destroying killing technique with 5 times the combat power, but he was unable to defeat him for a while. But that doesn't matter. The important thing is that his father and Archimedes are still in danger, which makes Jason uneasy. Huh. Jason hummed, and flew back dozens of meters with an indifferent expression. In that case, a golden light flashed in Jason's eyes. Buzz. A golden ripple spread out with Jason as the center, covering the world at the same time. At the same time, Jason's aura continued to rise, his whole body glowed with golden light, and a strong aura continued to rise from his body. Jason's eyes were like lightning, staring at him, and thousands of golden lights shot out from his whole body. For a moment, countless sword shadows floated, and the original power of the Golden Law emerged in the entire sky, and then combined with the spiritual power released by Jason. The combination instantly condenses into a world of swords. Condensation. Jason shouted. As Jason spoke, the world of swords that originally covered half of the sky shrank rapidly. Countless golden sword energies continued to shrink and condense, and then formed a huge golden sword nearly 10 meters long in front of Jason. The nearly 10-meter-long golden giant sword completely contained the world of swords. The highly condensed energy vibrated, and the space at the edge of the sword blade was directly cut into black cracks by the automatically dissipated sword energy. Jason looked at Slime coldly. Sword World Ghost, how can you condense the Sword World? Slime looked at Jason in shock. What exactly is in this spiritual treasure? Why are both Lay and Jace able to condense the world of swords after entering it? For a while, Slime attributed the reason why Jason was able to condense the world of swords to the fact that he had entered it. In the maze of death. Humph. Jason stared at his opponent, holding a huge golden sword. Huh. The huge sword of the world slashed down at once, leaving a faint golden rainbow light in midair, and instantly came to the front of the slime. Boom. The golden sword of the world collided with the black sword. Slime's whole body was shaken violently, and his figure suddenly retreated. The tall shadow behind him also swayed. So strong, much stronger than the sword of the world condensed by lightning. Slime was shocked in his heart. Bang! Bang! Jason caught up and struck with 2 more swords, and Slime struggled to parry them. Crack! Slime suddenly raised his head and found that the shadow behind him was shaking, and there was a faint feeling that it wanted to collapse, and he couldn't help being shocked. Whoosh! The slime retreated backwards. Jason did not pursue him. He swayed and suddenly came to the battlefield where Renault was. The sword of the world in his hand was aimed at a skinny old man wearing a golden robe without stopping, and he slashed down hard. No! In the distance, Slime was shocked when he saw this scene. He immediately shouted, "Dustin, be careful." Hearing Slime's shout, he felt a sense of terror behind him. Dustin, who was surged with power, immediately turned around and was horrified when he saw the sword of the world coming at him quickly. Roar! Dustin roared suddenly. He didn't care about attacking Renault anymore. He quickly retreated. Thousands of golden lights bloomed from the long sword in his opponent's hand, which also condensed into a golden sword in his hand. Greatsword. One of the golden mysteries, the sword of the day. As Dustin roared, the golden giant sword instantly burst out with thousands of golden lights, meeting the sword of the world that Jason chopped down. What sword of heaven? The sword of the world is the most powerful, just die. Jason made a cold voice, his body suddenly grew taller, and he waved the sword of the world expressionlessly. Two giant swords that were also glowing with golden light collided in the void. Pung! In Dustin's wide-eyed look of horror, the sword of heaven in his hand was bombarded by Jason's sword of the world, like glass hitting diamond, and countless cracks appeared instantly. Then it suddenly shattered. A large number of colorful small swords were flying around, and the world sword, controlled by Jason, was more domineering and rampant, smashing through the opponent's sword of the sky and also falling on Dustin. A wave of destruction. The power of the earth suddenly penetrated Dustin's body. In the sky, Dustin's horrified expression froze, and then there was a pung sound, and in everyone's horrified eyes, Dustin, who was slashed by the sword of the world, the whole person instantly turned into nothingness, leaving only half of the broken sword and flying into the sky, and nothing else was left. Even Caswall, the first holy son of the Salem Empire and an 8th-level senior imperial spiritual master, could defeat him. With the sword of the world, it is not particularly difficult to kill Dustin, an 8th-level intermediate imperial spiritual master. Dustin! The roar of shock and anger once again resounded throughout the world. Xiao had just killed Dustin's Jason. He wanted to attack the other two 8th-level emperor spiritual masters of the 13 kingdoms of the Southern Mysteries, but saw the angry slime like an angry bull. He rushed over like lightning. "You brat, I'm going to kill you, kill you." Endless rumbling roars came from Slime's mouth. His eyes instantly turned red, and his body and face were covered with black lines. His whole person became terrifying and abnormal. At the same time, there seemed to be a head inside his body. As if the dormant wild beast had awakened, the power emitted from its body continued to rise. Roar! The slime came to Jason in an instant, roared and waved the sword in his hand. Jason immediately controlled the sword of the world and rushed forward. Bang! A piece of the sky collapsed, the world sword in Jason's hand shook, and the whole person continued to retreat backwards. Die! Slime roared again, continuously spitting out powerful earth elemental spiritual power, and with a rumbling sound, he chopped off the black sword in his hand. Whoops! The space was cut open like paper, revealing a dark hole, in which a large amount of spatial turbulence appeared, and then disappeared instantly. The black sword came to Jason's head in an instant. Boom! Jason blocked it with difficulty, the world sword in his hand trembled, and his whole body was suddenly thrown far away. Jason! Seeing this scene, Renaud said nervously, and Archimedes and others who were surrounded by Sharon and others also showed worry on their faces. What's going on? Jason stabilized his figure in the air and showed a shocked expression. He could feel that the power in the slime's body opposite had suddenly increased a lot compared to before. Even him, I also felt a sense of crisis, a vague feeling that I couldn't suppress. Roar! The slime kept roaring and roaring. He stabilized his figure in the air, pointed at Jason, and rushed towards Jason like a mountain, constantly swinging the sword in his hand. Boom! 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 A series of roars continued to ring in the sky of Chaos City, and powerful spiritual power continued to dissipate. A large number of buildings were constantly shaken and collapsed, and people dispersed in fear. Kill everyone in the City of Chaos, kill as much as you want. Slime roared at Hoffman and Sharon while fighting against Jason. In the sky, Jason kept retreating under the fierce attacks of slimes, his face anxiously looking at the battle situation in the distance. Dustin died on his own. Apart from Slime, the other opponents now only have Hoffman, an 8th-level intermediate water-based imperial spiritualist, and DeVito, an 8th-level low-level fire-based imperial spiritualist. Although his father's body he was injured, but he still had no problem blocking their two attacks. What Jason was worried about was the battlefield in Archimedes. He could feel that among the imperial spiritual masters in the entire Chaos City, only Archimedes and Reagan were 7th-level senior imperial spiritual masters, while the rest, Maria and an elder from the Bayuan family, were 7th-level intermediate imperial spiritual masters. spiritual masters, the rest are all 7th level low-level imperial spiritual masters. As for the 13 kingdoms in the Southern Territory, most of them are 7th level high-level and intermediate level imperial spiritual masters. Their overall strength is far superior to Archimedes and the others. Now Archimedes and the others are all injured and suffering. Hard support. Jason wanted to rush over to support, but under the crazy pressure of the slime, he couldn't be happy at all, and Jason couldn't fight to his heart's content. Just when Jason was anxious, he said "Chi." One by one. In the distant sky, a cyan figure rushed here, like a meteor. In a moment, it came to the sky above the territory of chaos. Who is it? Many people glanced at the figure with their peripheral vision. It was a young man with brown hair. He was extremely young. He looked to be in his early 20s, but he exuded an astonishing spiritual energy. Master. As soon as the figure came to the battlefield, he saw Jason fighting the slime, and he immediately shouted. This person came to Lokuan with Jason. However, when Jason was approaching the city of chaos, he saw that the city was in a mess all the way. He was worried that something would happen to the city of chaos, so he sped up. Speed came first, but Lokan was much slower. Lokan. Jason's face immediately showed joy when he saw Luokuan. Hurry up and save your senior brother. Elder brother? Luokuan's eyes flashed across the battlefield. Then he instantly looked at Archimedes, who was surrounded by Sharon and others. Although Lokan had never met Archimedes, he instinctively felt that this young man who looked no older than 30 was his canine senior brother Archimedes. Yes, master. Seeing Archimedes and the others trapped in the siege, covered in blood, Lokan's eyes showed anger. He had already taken out the 10,000 wood emperor staff, shouted loudly, and rushed towards them in an instant. Archimedes and the others were in the battle group. Haha. Seeing this scene, Jason burst out laughing. Knowing Lokan's strength, he no longer worried about Archimedes and the others, and focused all his attention on slime. Huh. Jason controlled the world sword and faced the slime fiercely. A shocking explosion sounded again, and Jason, who let go of his body and mind, and the slime fought together. The golden sword of the world and the black sword kept colliding with each other. Crack. Jason looked up suddenly and found that the sword of the world he controlled had cracks and was cracking. He couldn't help but be shocked with such a collision. The sword of the world that the world of his own sword has condensed into is already unstable and about to collapse. Haha. Slime laughed crazily, with a ferocious expression, and the sword in his hand kept cutting down. Pung. The sword of the world in Jason's hand could not withstand the resistance and suddenly cracked, turning into countless metal elements and dissipating into the air. Jason retreated suddenly and looked at Slime solemnly. The power of Slime far exceeded Jason's expectations, which made Jason feel incredible. The swords of the world collapsed. This was something that did not happen when they fought Casper, the first son of the Salem Empire. This slime was just the top master of the 13 kingdoms of the Southern Mystery in the southern part of the continent, which is equivalent to the status of northwest China in the mainland, and is very remote. Even if the opponent is an 8th-level senior emperor spiritual master, how can he be so powerful? More powerful than Caswall, the top master of the 4 empires? Haha, your world sword has collapsed, let's see what else you can do. Just accept your death. On the opposite side, Slime said crazily, his eyes were red, his expression was crazy, and his skin was covered with spider webs. The general black lines were twisting and beating with the breathing, and they were extremely evil. This is some kind of spiritual forbidden art. Sensing the evil aura on the slime, after carefully looking at the strange slime, the well-informed Jason's face was solemn, and he couldn't help but exclaimed. He finally understood why this slime was suddenly so powerful. In the library of the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, he had seen some records. There were some forbidden techniques on the mainland that could improve the strength of the spiritual medicine master in a short period of time. However, this forbidden technique would cause great harm to the spiritualist. Once used, either it will permanently degrade the spiritual master, or it will reduce the lifespan, or it will damage the soul. It will also have an impact on the spiritual master's spirit, making him extremely evil and bloodthirsty. In short, it will be extremely harmful to the giant dog, and it is usually orthodox. Healers don't know how to use it at all, and this slime obviously relied on some evil forbidden technique to suddenly increase in strength. However, a new doubt also appeared in Jason's mind. This kind of spiritual forbidden technique is extremely evil and makes people unconscious and bloodthirsty. Therefore, it is prohibited by all major powers in the mainland, let alone in a small, remote and backward place on the mainland like the 13 kingdoms of the southern region. Even in the elixir master tower, Jason could only see records, but could not find the method of practicing forbidden arts at all. This slime, and where did you practice? Jia, you brat, you ruined my good deeds. Today, I'm going to kill you, pluck out your skin, and drink your blood. While Jason was thinking in his mind, the slime on the opposite side moved again. At this moment, his whole body was covered with dark evil lines. Jia smiled strangely, releasing a terrifying pressure from his body, and his eyes emitted an evil bloodthirsty light, aiming at if Jason is killed, he will be struck with a knife. Boom! The sky collapsed, and endless earth elements raged. The black sword instantly grew in size, forming a giant sword. The difference from before was that, in addition to the earth elements, there were also strange black streaks on the sword. The power shrouded and was chilling. The black sword was like a meteorite falling from the sky, hitting Jason fiercely and destroying the world. Jason Master, Sir, seeing this scene, in the sky, Renault, Loken, Archimedes, Gandalf and others, as well as all the people in the entire city of chaos, stared at each other and shouted in surprise. Roaring angrily.